Rutherford theory of the atom itself has undergone further falsification and refinement. Yeah, so that's how science works. So because it's working on the material reality, it can't have any say over non-material things, really.
So what it means then, you cannot expect scientists who are theists to produce publications, because if it's all to do with falsification, what are they going to falsify?
That's right.
Because you're producing some indications for the existence of a creator, not non-existence of something.
That's right.
Okay.
So you can maybe look at philosophy and social sciences aspects of religion, if you like, but they don't. But those are separate. That's a separate discipline, very separate discipline from the hard physical sciences, shall we call them that? Yeah, or the natural sciences. Yeah, they are very different disciplines, and they have their value. I mean, there's one quite well-known Muslim scholar who says that one of the faults of the Muslims in the present era is that they don't do social sciences. I'm talking about in the seminaries. They read text, but they don't then look at the product of what they then make pronouncements on, what that effect has on the society, because they don't do any of the social studies. Now, as a scientist, you would get an undergraduate or a postgraduate to go into a lab at some stage and do work in an area, and they would do experiments around maybe a key area that their supervisor has a particular interest in. But what you don't find is a similar thing with shall we say, mullahs or muftis or sheikhs. They don't tend to tell their guys, usually they're postgraduate students, I have to say, they don't tell them, go out into the field and find out what's the result of this train of thought.
We shouldn't be expecting muftis or sheikhs. We need academics. There are academics in institutions, Muslim academics. Are they not doing that? Is that what you're saying?
No, they're not. Generally speaking, there is a new generation who are. They tend not to be in the Middle East. They tend to be in Britain and France, Germany, obviously the developed countries, and particularly in America. That's true. They are truly academics in the sense that they've gone through a non-traditional, from an Islamic point of view, I suppose you would say, the Muslim point of view. They've gone through a non-traditional education where they've gone through BSc, bachelor's, master's, PhD, and then if they've been hired, then they become an assistant professor, postdoctoral fellow usually, assistant professor, associate professor, or equivalent in here, reader and professor, senior lecturer, reader, professor. So yes, you're right. Those are doing the job that the guys in the seminaries should have been doing, but aren't, because they are constrained by their own worldview, I suppose.
Or in another way, should we not say they're constrained by their academia?
Yes, maybe.
Because their particular academia would not grant PhDs and so on, because it's not all seminaries who can give PhDs who are theological seminaries.
Yes,
we're talking about Islamic ones.
Yes.
And even if they did, there may be some that does exist, would they be recognized in other bodies of academia?
So it seems like we have two branches then. We have a kind of a traditional conservative seminary arrangement now, plus, particularly in the West, a academic approach now to Islam, which is very, very interesting. So this is why I'm coming to ask you about Sharia, because I think this has a bearing on what this discussion is having. It will hopefully come around to addressing this interesting idea. Some of these interesting
So
ideas.
what's your interest in Sharia, if I may ask?
Well, I mean, I hear the word a lot. I read a lot about it, and I think there's a lot of confusion, both from Muslim and non-Muslims, particularly because the Islam, shall we call them, the Islam haters. I don't like the word Islamophobes, but those who hate Islam and have a vested interest in downgrading it or bad-mouthing it, they are using the term in a derogatory sense. And then on the other, that's one extreme. The other extreme is certain Muslims are saying that the Sharia is divine law, right? So those are I think, from my understanding, those are the two extremes.
Okay. So from what you have studied from the academics, let's focus only on the academics. Whether you've read their tertiary materials or their primary articles.
Indeed.
What is Sharia in your understanding?
So there's a range of opinion. Okay. And it ranges from divine law, essentially, quite equal, Sharia. I mean, there are one. I can't quote the author, but I could probably find. Yeah, I could probably find who his name is. But Sharia equals divine law is one equation, and variations on that, all the way up to people like Khalid Abu Fadl, who says that Sharia is. I mean, I'm kind of interpreting him now, but my understanding is that I think he thinks that some of it is rooted in divine precedence, law, but a lot of it is man-made, man-derived from the human intellect. Okay, so it's and the one thing that overrides everything seems to be the idea of a pathway to the watering hole. Yeah?
That's the linguistic meaning.
That's the linguistic meaning, yeah. So what about your understanding? Because you are one of several da'is, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
But it doesn't make us specialists in Sharia or any other field.
But hang on, you have to somehow discuss your belief with the non-Muslims, yes? Right? How do you, when somebody who's a non-Muslim comes to you, how do you describe to them Sharia in a way that makes them convinced that it isn't something to be afraid of, for example? Because, there are different competing ideas, yeah?
Yeah, it's one, okay. So if people understand Sharia to be only criminal law, then this is where the problem starts.
Yes, exactly.
Because you've already narrowed it down to certain aspects of a life's affair.
Right.
You can have personal law within your own home.
Okay.
How you deal with your family members, the interaction that you have, with other people, which doesn't involve crime and punishment. Right. All of these interactions.
So you're saying about prayer and fasting and things like that are part of the, let's say, Sharia.
So if you want to broadly categorize it in one of your individual interactions with God and what God asks of you, and other than that, which is people or environment, whatever it might be. So you might hear scholars describing ibadat and muamalat. Yes. So one is to do with your worship, and one is to do with your actions of any kind, right?
Yes.
So Sharia is not divorced one from the other.
Right.
It's an encompassing way where you're supposed to follow and conduct your life. So even if it means that when you smile at your brother, that becomes charity, and charity is worship.
Yes.
So that is part of Sharia.
So what would the classical scholars believe Sharia was?
They're never restricted to one or the other.
Yeah.
There's always been a broad understanding.
Yes.
It's only people who are focusing on certain elements, they say, oh, we're talking about Sharia law here, right?
Yes, yeah, okay.
You can see Sharia
is law. Yeah, it's this idea of it being some legal definition, yes?
Yeah.
I think is what you're saying.
So I think the emphasis occurred in recent times because of all the actions that we see in the matters of criminal system, justice system, where there's a punishment imputed, whether it's cutting off the hands of a thief or stoning an adulterer, or
But I understand those are very extremely, if not impossible, rare events.
Yes.
Very rare events.
Very rare events.
Something like 200 hands were
sure.
chopped in
I won't be able to give you an
period
actual
of the
figure.
whole of the Islamic Caliphate. Yes.
I won't be able to give you a figure, but
somebody told me this.
When it's so a smaller number, it tells you that the amount of evidence.
Was anyone ever stoned? I mean, apart from the famous hadith, was where the woman confessed? You know what I'm referring to. Was anybody ever stoned outside of that period of time?
I think there are some examples.
Really?
Some examples. I can't pinpoint
extremely
exactly.
Rare, though. Is that
very
what you're
extremely rare. The reason being, I think there's two main reasons. One is if Islam catered for all the needs, you don't need to go to the alternative to commit that act. And secondly, when the acts are committed, the high level of evidence that is demanded of it to establish
four witnesses,
establish the crime,
male, blah blah blah. Okay. Going back to Sharia, did you find the word in the Quran? Do you know there's only one occasion in the Quran where it appears?
The example I was going to show you about.
It's 45:18.
Okay, let's have a look.
The phrase is Shariat min al-Amr.
What's the root word for Sharia? Do you know?
tell me.
I'm asking.
No, you tell me.
No. So when I search
it's
for it,
isn't it? Shara.
So you have the word Sharia.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to your word. I'll show you.
Yeah, sure.
So it was what? Which one? Surah 14?
45, ayah 18.
45.
Oh, you got the same version of the Quran that I've been using.
Okay. Shari'atin. So Shin, Ra, Ya, Ain, Tay Marbuta, right?
That's right. Sharia, yeah, that's it, Sharia. Do you know when that was revealed?
Not personally, no.
It's a Maccan.
So Surah Al-Jathiyah.
That's a Macki ayah.
So it's a Makki surah.
Yeah.
But not exactly in what.
No, we know it's a Makki ayah.
What occasions? I can't tell you.
Yeah, no, I can't either. I haven't read Ibn Kathir's tafsir.
So when we're talking, look, sometimes a specific terminology may be derived from a concept, which is all embedded throughout the Quran.
Yes.
So Sharia is not something that has been totally non-existent in the Quranic concepts of what it should be. If Allah says, for example, obey Allah, ati Allah, and ati Rasul, and obey the Messenger, and those who are in authority amongst you.
So now the question is, it's a Maccan surah, a Maccan ayah, and did the Prophet ever use that term Sharia in his hadith? Is it reported in the hadith?
I think you're just only focusing on the word.
No, I'm not.
Let's focus.
It's a really important point.
Sure.
Right? Because if you do a word search in the hadith collections, it occurs. Most of the hadith where the word Sharia is used supposedly by the Prophet, it's used in a non-legal sense. Or they are weak hadith, which are not accepted by Albani and other hadith criticizers, muhaddithin I think you call them. Furthermore, the Sahaba never used the term, ever.
What did they use?
They never used Sharia.
What did they use?
I'm not sure what they used, but they never used Sharia. It's never been recorded in any of the speeches of the Sahaba, including especially the Khulafa Rashidin.
This I can look into because
yes,
it was.
Would you like the reference to the journal article?
Yeah, no problem.
Fine.
But
here we go.
The focus on the legal and non-legal aspects, the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and the Tabi'een after them, they implemented what we call hudud.
That's right.
Right.
I'm not arguing against that.
No. Is the hudud part of the Sharia or from the Sharia? From your understanding?
The point that I'm making, if you think about it, and the hudud is part of what we would call Muslim law or fiqh. Okay?
And what is it based on?
It's based on the Quran, and indeed also the hadith, because the instructions, the fine instructions of how you do it, where it applies, all that kind of stuff, is mostly found in the hadith. That's not the argument. The argument here is that the word Sharia is being misapplied, misused, because it was never used in a legal sense.
Okay, that's what you were telling me. Okay.
Yes.
Look at the reference and look into it. No problem.
I think you'll enjoy the read.
Yeah.
I have a copy here, if you bear with me.
Have you read any reviews of this particular article?
It's so new, it's not been reviewed yet.
Okay.
I'm giving you off the press stuff.
Okay.
You want to take a photo of this, you can, because it'll give you the journal title. You know what's best? I've actually got this as a PDF. If you give me your details, your swap details, I can email it to you, because you've got to spend money to get this.
Let me take the graphical details. So the author, Farouk
he's from Bahrain. He's an economist.
So he's arguing that the Sharia was never applied by the Prophet in a legal sense, nor the companions.
No, he's not saying that. He's saying that we're misusing the word.
Okay, sorry.
We're misusing the word.
Okay.
He's not saying, so that's an obvious criticism. Oh, he's one of these progressives. He's a modernist scholar. He wants to redefine the whole of the core of Islam. No, he's saying that there is fiqh, there is hudud, of course. Nobody could deny this. There is a Muslim law. You can even call it Islamic law, but you should not call it Sharia.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting.
And the evidences are very, very.
But I don't see how this is going to be relevant.
Guess why? Because you've got Hizb ut-Tahrir, you've got Ikhwan al-Muslimin, you have Jamiat Islami, you have ISIS or ISIL or whatever the hell they're called now, all saying the same thing. We want to enact or establish the Khilafah to implement the Sharia.
So you're saying the understanding these groups are bringing are in contradiction to the traditional understanding?
I'm saying that if you look at the prophets, but firstly there's no ijma on anything. There's no ijma on anything. Careful. What do I mean by that? I mean that anything that is not obvious. So in terms of fiqh things, Ibn Hanbal famously wrote that there's no ijma on anything, right? So one of the arguments against defining or redefining parts of terminology in Islam is that no, all the scholars, there's an ijma on the Sharia, there's an ijma on what constitutes this and that.
And what did the scholars say about this quote?
There's never been.
Let's assume, because I haven't read this quote.
I think it's accepted. I think it's accepted.
And is this statement accepted to be representative of the scholars of his time, before and after?
I think it's a general observation that he made, which is that people who claim there's an ijma are wrong. That's what he's saying. Okay.
But there are ijma.
Yes, there are ijma. Yes, of course. But now we're talking about on fiqh things about which there can be disagreement, not about no Muslim is going to say the Quran, that there's any scholar that doesn't.
No, we're talking about ijma as a source of fiqh.
That's not a source of fiqh. People think it is, but it isn't.
So you're basically.
So there are several publications that have discussed ijma in detail, and they all come up with.
Don't you think these are fringe views?
No. They are. You're right that the scholars of the seminary scholars that we were talking about earlier think and propagate this idea of ijma.
Traditionally,
there is.
If you studied, which you may have already, traditional fuqaha and their fiqh and their madhahib.
Yes, I know that.
So
it's one of the so-called sources.
It's not so-called. If you have a madhab, which clearly identifies a source of its jurisprudence and its laws that's going to bring from it, ijma is one of them.
Excuse me. It's not, and I'll tell you why. How do you define?
Answer it.